evening. I'd like to welcome you and call to order the September 24th, 2019 Port Orchard City Council regular meeting. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Right, we are to the, is there any amendments proposed for this evening's agenda? I will let you know that the public hearing that we have scheduled, when we get to that item, we are not going to hold that. It wasn't noticed properly, so we're going to, but we didn't feel like we should pull it off the agenda, so when we get to that, we're just going to not hold the public hearing, renotice it, and then hold that at a future date. So with that,
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion of this evening's agenda? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is, or the agenda is approved. We are to our citizen comment period, and the first citizen comment period is for anything, items on this evening's agenda. We have a second citizen comment period at the end of the meeting for other items. So anybody wishing to address the council for items on this evening's agenda? All right, hearing none, we'll close the first citizen comment period. We are to the consent agenda.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lucarelli. Any discussion of this evening's consent agenda items? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, consent agenda has passed. We don't have any presentations. As I spoke to, the public hearing that is on the agenda is not going to be held, so we're going to skip that item, and we'll renotice that and hold that at a future date. We are moving along to our business items. The first is 7A, adoption of an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code, chapters 20.39, adopting regulations related to social services facilities and repealing interim ordinance number 0519. Mr. Bond.
Yes, thank you. On April 9th, 2019, the City Council adopted emergency...
Bond, could you pull your microphone just a little
Yes.
closer? Thanks.
On April 9th, 2019, the City Council adopted interim emergency ordinance 15-19 to provide regulations for the siting and development of secured residential facilities for sexually violent predators. Per RCW 3670A390, the interim ordinance is effective for 6 months until October 9th, 2019. In compliance with that statute, the council was required to hold a public hearing within 60 days of adoption of the interim zoning ordinance, and a public hearing was held on May 14th, 2019. Following the public hearing, the council directed staff to work with the city attorney to prepare a permanent ordinance. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the permanent ordinance on June 4th, 2019, and recommended approval to the City Council on September 3rd, 2019. No further changes have been made to the code between the interim and permanent ordinances. Staff recommends that the City Council approve the ordinance as presented.
Councilmember Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the City Council approve the ordinance to adopt permanent regulations for the siting and development of a secured residential facility for sexually violent predators.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Cacciardi. Questions or comments related to this ordinance? All right, you'll be voting on the adoption of an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code, chapters 20.39, adopting regulations related to social service facilities. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the ordinance passes. We are to 7B, adoption of an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code, sections 20.200.012, tenant occupancy permit. Mr. Bond.
Thank you. The city issues tenant certificate of occupancy permits when a new tenant occupies a building or suite within a building. We have relied on the International Building Code, Section 111, Certificate of Occupancy, subsection 1, Use and Occupancy, which states, a building or structure shall not be used or occupied, and a change in the existing use or occupancy classification of a building or structure or a portion thereof shall not be made until the building official has issued a certificate of occupancy thereafter as provided herein. that's quoting the code. Other jurisdictions which issue certificate of occupancy permits, including Kitsap County, have amended their local code to add specificity to what is a general statement in the IBC. This code amendment is intended to provide clarity to the business community for the process. The tenant certificate of occupancy permit provides the opportunity for the jurisdiction to review for allowable uses in the zoning districts, to inspect for potential fire hazards or structural deficiencies, and to assure compliance with city utility billing for water and sewer service. The city also coordinates this process with Kitsap Public Health District in situations requiring food handling safety. A tenant occupancy permit review and inspection process screens for all of these potential deficiencies and ensures a correction prior to receiving a certificate of occupancy for new tenants while protecting the public health, safety, and welfare. And just a side note on this, this is really codifying the practice that we already employ. It just hadn't ever been put into our code as a specific amendment to the building code, and it matches what the county is doing.
Councilmember Chang.
I move that the City Council approve an ordinance amending Section 20.200.012 Port Orchard Municipal Code to adopt certificate of occupancy review and inspection requirements for certain new tenants and tenant changes of use.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Diener. Any questions of Mr. Bond? Mr. Diener, did you have a
I
question?
just wanted to point out that this was also reviewed by the Land Use Committee as well.
Thank you. Okay, with that, you'll be voting on adoption of an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code, sections 20.200.012, tenant occupancy permit. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the ordinance is approved. We are to 7C, adoption of a resolution amending amending resolution number 1946, updating speed limits in certain areas within the city of Port Orchard. Mr. Bond.
Yes, thank you. Pursuant to Port Orchard Municipal Code Section 10.08 and in accordance with with the Revised Code of Washington 4661-415, speed limits in Port Orchard are set by resolution. The city's current speed limit resolution, number 1946, was adopted on August 27, 2001. Since that time, the city has completed numerous annexations and has experienced significant population growth, which requires the city to review and update Resolution 1946. The city's transportation engineering consultant, TSI Inc., conducted a speed study to evaluate possible reductions on 4 city roads: Sydney Road Southwest, Old Clifton Road, Southwest Sedgwick Road, and Glenwood Road Southwest. Based on the recommendations found in the study, the city proposes 4 changes in speed limits from those that are indicated on existing speed limit signs as follows. The first one, Old Clifton Road from Anderson Hill Road to the West City boundary. This is the McCormick Woods portion of Old Clifton Road. It is recommended that this speed limit be reduced from 45 to 35, and the reasons for this are the opening of McCormick Village Park. We've had a lot more turning movements in and out, as well as additional construction at McCormick Woods. Glenwood Road and Glenwood Road and Sedgwick Road from the West City boundary to Sydney Avenue Southwest. This is the area near the Albertsons at Sydney and Sedgwick, and running out towards the new Stetson Heights development, which is under construction. The engineer recommends a reduction from 40 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour. Finally, Sydney Road Southwest. This is the entire length of the corridor along Sydney Glen Elementary and to the South City boundary just south of Albertsons. It is recommended that we lower the speed limit from 35 to 30 miles an hour in this area. The draft resolution which you're reviewing tonight also cleans up a number of discrepancies that we found. In some cases, we annexed areas of the city that had deviated from the default 25 mile per hour speed limit. We're not changing the signs, but we are formally codifying those speed limits. And we also found a couple of other areas where the signage didn't match what we had previously adopted, and so we're cleaning that up as part of this action tonight. With that said, staff recommends that the City Council adopt the proposed resolution updating Chapter 10.08 Port Orchard Municipal Code to update speed limits within the city of Port Orchard.
Mayor, I move that the City Council adopt a proposed resolution amending Resolution number 1946 within Chapter 10.08 Port Orchard Municipal Code to update speed limits within the city of Port Orchard.
Second it.
Second by Councilmember Clausen. Have any questions of Mr. Bond on the speed limits? Yes, Mr. Rosepepe.
Nick, so when will this take place? And also, I believe when we discussed this earlier, there was some discussion with the county that they were going to also make a change, I believe, out on Glenwood, leading into that.
Okay, this will take effect as soon as the new signs can be posted. So once this is approved, Mark Fournier in Public Works will order the signs, and it'll take a couple of weeks to get them put up. They can be enforced once they're up, and I believe they do some special, they put flags or some sort of attention-getting device on the sign to alert people to the change. As far as the county, the county is also going to move in concert with us to lower the speed limit on Old Clifton coming into the city from west of McCormick Woods and through the donut near the industrial park to Highway 16, so that'll match 35 miles per hour through the entire corridor. They have decided that they're not going to adjust Glenwood at this time coming into the city, though they're going to continue to monitor it, and once traffic starts coming in and out of Stetson Heights, they may choose to do so at that time. So they reviewed what we had done, and they felt that they were still comfortable with their speed limits, and I think that's because you have such a long stretch of Glenwood coming into the city that's at 45 miles an hour, and unlike Old Clifton, where you're coming from an intersection where everybody is just getting going and you don't go very far before you're in the city, they wanted to leave it at 45 for now.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask a question similar to Jade. In addition to just like little flags that may bring attention to a speed limit sign, do we have any other things that just call it out more, like speed limits has changed? Or
Police cars.
trying to avoid that as our first option.
We can also post the notice through Facebook as well as our public hearing notice contacts. Put it on the website as well. We can,
People are creatures of habit, especially the Old Clifton Road going from 45 to 35. That's a pretty significant change that people may not see right away.
We'll work to get the message out. But
Chief, you have some words of wisdom?
Well, I don't know if they're full of wisdom, but one of the things that we can do is also, instead of going out and immediately enforcing the new traffic speeds, we can go out and do an educational. So we can pull you over and say, hey, just to let you know, the traffic speeds have been reduced by 10 miles an hour. Please be mindful. And we can put that out through whatever media that we decide, and folks can be aware of that. But that's a lot more successful. I mean, our goal is not to write tickets. Our goal is to reduce speed and reduce crashes.
Perfect. Thank you.
I have a question. There are certain segments of the highway, I know 166 would be a good example, but we don't have it here, where it goes from 45 to 35 to 25. Certain parts of, I think it's the county, where you actually drive over bumps. I don't think you call them turtles or rumble strips, but it's something that the car feels when you go from one speed limit to another. If we don't like that, and I can see Mark doesn't like it, have we considered paint on the road that just says like 35 or now approaching 35? Because in addition to the signs, if you had it on the road, maybe more people would see it.
Change now.
Well, it's really important that whatever we do, we follow the, uniform code. And so in cases where we're reducing speed, there are certain speed reductions where we're required to post the speed reduction ahead. There's other ones that don't. So one is, grinding asphalt isn't anything we really want to do. I've only seen that really on state highways, like coming down from Belfort, but it's going from 50 to 35.
That's
and it's
racing.
coming to a light. So we'll follow the manual for uniform traffic control devices, and if it warrants a speed reduction sign ahead, if it warrants a traffic revision ahead, we'll make sure we get the signage. So we'll be following the MUTCD.
Thank you.
Mr. Bond, Mr. Dorsey, or the Chief Brown? Okay. With that, you'd be voting on the adoption of a resolution amending resolution number 1946, updating speed limits on certain roads within the city of Port Orchard. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution passes. We are to 7D, approval of amendment number 1 to contract number 025-17 with BHC Consultants LLC for the 2017 Water System Plan Update. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you, Your Honor, council members. On July 11, 2017, City of Port Orchard City Council approved contract C025-17 with BHC Consultants LLC for the 2017 Water System Plan Update in an amount not to exceed $134,007. During the development of the plan, significant gaps within the water system model were discovered. Additional data was collected and additional time was required for the continued model development. During this process, a shortage of both storage and source were discovered within the McCormick 580-660 zone. Due to these findings, additional scope and budget was needed, including coordinating efforts with other agencies. It's also been determined that an amended financial gap analysis is now necessary, whereby a financial consultant needs to be added to the contract to assess both the CIP funds needed and potential changes to the facility, capital facility charges, or the CFCs. So an additional $94,490 along with the time extension to December 31st, 2020 is needed for this contract. So staff recommends that the City Council authorize the mayor to execute Amendment Number 1 to contract number C025-17 with BHC Consultants, LLC, in an amount not to exceed $94,490, thereby bringing the new contract total to $228,497 and extending the contract term. And as we approved a couple weeks ago, the foster pilot-related activities, and we've been working with the finance director on those and where that funding is coming from. This additional funding and item 7E has also been coordinated with the finance director.
Councilmember Lucarelli?
I move to authorize the mayor to execute Amendment Number 1 to contract number CO25-17 with BHC Consultants, LLC, in an amount not to exceed $94,490, thereby bringing the new contract total to $228,497 and extending the contract term to December 31st, 2020.
Second.
Councilmember Rosapepe seconded that. Questions for Mr. Dorsey? Councilmember Lucarelli, you have a comment?
Mark, was PRV the pressure relief valve?
Reducing. Pressure
Reducing valve?
reducing valve, yes.
Okay. I didn't know if it was
Pressure
reducing or there was no explanation. Thank you.
Other questions? So I got ahead of the engineer on that. He's been paying
Alright.
attention in some of those meetings. All right, you'll be voting on approval of Amendment Number 1 to contract number 025-17 with BHC Consultants, LLC, for the 2017 Water System Plan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The amendment is approved. We're to 7E, approval of Amendment Number 1 to contract number 049-17 with BHC Consultants, LLC, for on-call engineering services. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you, Your Honor, council members. Also on July 11, 2017, the Port Orchard City Council approved contract C049-17 with BHC Consultants for the on-call water and wastewater engineering services in an amount not to exceed $140,000. As current and projected development within the city has continued to increase, the authorized task required by the consultants has exceeded the current contract amount. An additional $25,000 is anticipated to be invoiced during the remainder of the contract period because that's expiring this year. As an additional note, when this was originally set up, we have two different programs that are the concurrency for water, sewer, and transportation. And that's a pass-through. And the on-call is actually where we're needing additional services for model information. So when we met with the consultant, we really realized that there's been some overlap. So as part of the 2020 biennial budget, or the 19 amendment, but moving into 2020, we'll be clearly separating concurrency as a pass-through and then the on-call, which this work will then continue for city activities for water and sewer. So we're going to clean that kind of overlap up. So with that, staff recommends that the City Council authorize the mayor to execute Amendment Number 1 to their contract number C049-17 with BHC Consultants in an amount not to exceed $25,000, thereby bringing the new contract total to $165,000. And the fiscal impacts are the same as before. That we've been working with the finance director on these.
Councilmember Lucarelli?
I move to authorize the mayor to execute Amendment Number 1 to contract number C049-17 with BHC Consultants in an amount not to exceed $25,000, thereby bringing the new contract total to $165,000.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Teener. Additionally, we've had a tremendous amount of expense in this category due to obviously the McCormick moratorium and having to then do additional modeling and work related to trying to figure out that situation to move forward. Questions for Mr. Dorsey on this matter? All right, hearing none, we'll be voting on approval of Amendment Number 1 to contract number 049-17 with BHC Consultants LLC for on-call engineering services. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment is approved. So we're on to our last business item, which is 7F, approval of the September 20th, 2019 council meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I've moved to approve the meeting minutes from September 10th as revised. We have a copy of those revised minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lucarelli. We have extensions by Councilmember Clausen and Councilmember Teener. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And 2 abstentions.
Right, and then just a misspelling in the last paragraph under section 12. It's the same misspelling as earlier in the document. Thank you.
Catch that Scrivener's errors. Okay, a couple of discussion items. Public Facilities District and the Community Center was at their meeting last night. And, we keep taking steps forward. I would think Councilmember Rosa Pepe and Councilmember Ashby attended. And we have a meeting Monday scheduled with their attorney, our attorney, Nick Bond, myself, and their executive director. And the goal is, I was a little disappointed and I let them know that at the podium last night. They'd sent us they knew my intent was to send them an agreement that captured the entire commitment from them. Their attorney sent us an ILA that we modified. He says, well, I have 2 different ILAs, and I sent them this one, and if you're intending to do this, then we need this other ILA. And my displeasure was we got our edits back to them 2 weeks ago, and it would have been nice to know that, so we weren't talking about something of insignificance, in my opinion. They could have got it back to us, and we could have had numerous edits to that agreement in the last couple of weeks. But so he came out into the hallway and apologized to me, actually, after the meeting. And now there's a meeting scheduled for Monday to do that face-to-face, that work was face-to-face. So I'm sure that we'll have, their next meeting is the 28th of October, I believe. Right. Bremerton again, and the goal is to have an agreement. We still don't have a commitment on the exact dollar amount they're going to give us, but I've gotten every meeting, the last 2 meetings I've gone to, we're going to fund you. We need to get this agreement done. I just don't know at what level. So I continue to work on that. The AWC, the next item I've got on here for discussion, and this is whether you want to put this on the agenda, and if we did, I think we'd need to hold a public hearing on this. And it relates to, and sorry, I'm with my technology here, I pulled up the wrong item. The car tab initiative, Initiative 976 on motor vehicle tabs. A number of cities have passed resolution in opposition to that, and you can see in the reasons why in the staff report there. And as we know, we've put enacted a $20 car tab fee, and it's part of our transportation funding in our city, and it was part of the package we put together to pay for Tremont, and it would remove about $200,000 a year from our city transportation budget that we'd have to make up some other way. So Is there an appetite for having a public hearing and possibly passing a resolution in opposition to this? Or do you want to
Let's
remain
hear what
silent?
everyone has to say about it. I think that's all right.
So I'm hearing a couple of heads nodding.
I agree.
You agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So we will work towards noticing that and holding a public hearing on the matter. And potentially, and then, so we would, I imagine, hold a public hearing. We wouldn't probably take action. Boy, we're getting tight on the ballot measures.
Those come out in
Yeah.
about 2 weeks.
Yeah. So we would take action on it 2 weeks before, I guess that's doable. We would hold a public hearing, our
get
first
at it.
meeting in October, and then take action on it.
Second meeting, we can conduct
Right.
business, second meeting in October,
Well, that's a work study.
but we can conduct business.
We could,
That'd be the best way to do that.
or we
Timely.
take it, I mean, we're still 2 weeks before the ballot there, the third meeting in October.
It's already out.
Okay. We can take action the same evening
We could.
that we hold the public hearing too. There's nothing
Why
to
can't
prevent
you?
us.
Why can't you?
We could, I said
Oh,
we
I'm sorry, I
could.
thought you said we can't the same night.
We
You
could.
could have two resolutions of ready to,
Yeah.
We could do that. If we
Or
needed more time,
not.
we could.
Okay. Councilmember Diener?
So I understand the impact on the transportation budget to the city, but is there, this otherwise seems pretty light on information. Is there a way to get the ballot statements for?
We
for
don't
this
have them.
amendment?
What we have here was provided by the Association of Washington Cities.
And this is all they provided?
Brandy, can we get something a little more robust for the work study?
Yes, I will see what I can find out and bring forward.
Yeah, because I think it'd be helpful not only for us, but also for the public that wants to testify on this issue.
And I don't know that those ballot statements have been published, but they
Yeah.
should be close.
Okay, yeah.
We'll provide what we can.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Third, legislative agenda. And that phone call I took just before was our lobbyist calling me back, and his recommendation is, and staff and I have been brainstorming on a number of ideas from, we know we need to do some updates to City Hall from roof, windows, and sidings, and we need to do plans and specs for it. We know that we need to remove the marquee downtown and do new street lights. And the items that we have on there, though, we're probably premature on the community center. This legislative session, we won't really have an ask. And his recommendation, it's a supplemental year, and you should probably only really ask for things that are true emerging issues or emergencies. And that we should continue to advocate for a transportation package that includes interchange improvements at Sedgwick, just like we did last session. Remember, there was a package, we were in it, the package didn't move forward. That we should advocate for another package, and that we should lay the groundwork for a large ask the following year related to the community center. Other ideas we had were utility-related or street-related, which don't typically do well in the capital budget. So, so what you see in the packets tonight is I think softening the language related to the community center. I think that's kind of what our ask will be, is not really to ask for anything other than advocating for the state investment in state routes, which in our community is the interchange improvements at Sedgwick and Highway 16. Economic development tools, and then the foster pilot program to continue that, which we are a part of, and without asking really for anything dollar-wise in the budget. Mr. Clausen?
the only thing that I would ask, and I really don't know specifically what it looks like yet, is that the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council is developing a legislative list or agenda, and there might be things that we feel like we should be supporting on a countywide basis. So until we see that, it's hard to say what we should or should not, but I just want to bring it to the table
And I think the purpose of this is for it to have our priorities, and I think you're right. We'll bring back those countywide issues, and typically, we support, or we have advocated and supported initiatives done by anything AWC is doing, because they're doing it for anything that benefits cities globally, and I serve on that board. So sometimes when I'm down in Olympia, it's for wearing our hat, and sometimes it's wearing AWC's hat too. But, I'm conscious of not advocating on things that would harm our city too.
No, I think those are all appropriate as long as it's something that has a connection to the city of Port Orchard, whether it's through AWC or a project that the county is doing in Silverdale. If it has some impact on our community and we feel like we can support it, I know, having been down Olympia, I didn't work in Olympia, but visiting with some of the legislators, the more time something is mentioned, even if it's just simply mentioned, it has a tendency to help sink in, so.
And that's, I think our one pager will include that community
Yeah.
center, but without an ask. It's really just to
Just to inform at that
inform
point.
them that, hey, we're gonna be back next year and we are gonna have an ask, a significant ask. Yes. So, okay, I'm gonna work with Josh a bit more on this, and then likely in November, maybe late October, we'll bring back a formal legislative agenda that's similar to this. And we'll probably have Josh attend that meeting and talk to, what he's hearing down and in the off season, so. Okay, I know where we're headed. So we're to council committee reports. Finance committee hasn't met. I think they're meeting on it's the 8th?
I believe.
October 8th, there it is on the agenda. Economic Development and Tourism has not met either, I don't believe, in October 14th. Utilities, have you met?
We actually canceled it until October 21st, 9:30 here at City Hall.
October 21st. We'll correct this agenda. Sewer Advisory Committee?
November 6th, 6:30 here at City Hall.
Okay. And Land Use.
We've landed on October 21 as the next meeting date at DCD at 9:30 a.m.
All right.
That's the same time as utilities, right?
Is it?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we've not landed on a date yet.
Thank you.
All right, come back. All right, lodging tax,
We'll be meeting the first week of October and have a date tomorrow.
okay.
Gotcha.
Festival Chimes and Lights,
We met. The next meeting is October 21st, 3:30 here at City Hall. We're moving forward with our tree decorating contest, advertising, and working specifically on the brochure.
all right. And outside agencies, transit, I rode the Waterman, which started service yesterday, last night. And I believe the two-boat service started yesterday also, too, did Mr. Clausen?
Yes.
From Bremerton to Seattle on the high-speed ferries. So it's exciting news. That'll run for a month, and hopefully the Waterman runs for much longer than that.
Hopefully.
And the Carlisle is going to go out for some significant repairs, but it will be back to our community at a future date. So Mayor's report, I just, this is a difficult employment environment, and we have turned over 15% of our workforce this past year, and which is keeping our HR coordinator pedaling very fast. So recently we made some improvements to our recruiting process. We've gone to stepped out of the dark ages maybe in paper and went to an electronic application process and onboarding system, which should make it easier to maybe get applicants, and then when we bring somebody on board, it's going to streamline the process. The last week's meeting, we had the presentation on the pathway. Those documents are all on the city's website. I've got also those poster boards down in the lobby this evening, and we've got our SK Wolf, or South Kitsap Wolf flag down in the lobby too. We picked that up last week.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Going back to the previous item about hiring, is there a trend that we can identify in people that are leaving the city? Like, is it a matter of?
Some of it is retirements, like our police chief. Some of it is people leaving because they want to, and other times
It's not
things
their
don't work
choice.
out.
Right, okay.
So it's a little bit of everything. There's
Okay.
not, it's just, there's a lot, jobs are pretty easy to find these days, good
Yeah.
jobs. And gosh, we've got great, I think, good salary, great benefit package.
Okay.
We've been stealing them from other cities too, so it's,
I know that other jurisdictions pay pretty well, City of Tacoma, across the water, all that, so that can be a
it,
competitive
it
issue.
is in our biennial budget for next year to do a salary survey to make sure we're staying competitive from a wage. I haven't seen it just for wage reasons. We've had a couple of significant retirements too, and it plays into that.
Right, okay.
But we are intending to do a salary survey next year, which would then be, we would propose to implement in the 2021-22 biennial budget.
Thank you.
You bet. Yes.
I just have a question going back 2 items I attend the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance,
Okay.
KEDA, and I just need
skipped
to
over
have
that.
I need to have it clarified. I attend these meetings, but I was just told that the fall forum isn't something that's covered by the council budget.
Louder, please.
Oh, I was just explaining that one of the meetings that is being held with the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance is not covered under our budget, and I would like the council to decide the priorities for these meetings, which ones I should attend and not.
Is that something we can talk about at retreat?
Maybe at the study session, if we could maybe bring that up. I just want to make sure that I'm covering the bases, but if it's not something you want me to attend, fine, whatever.
I guess the important thing is too, just building it into the budget. If identifying what all those costs are and building it into the budget.
And that's fine with me. In the past, I've attended this type of meeting, and now it doesn't look like it's covered, and I just want direction from the council, that's all. Thank you.
Other items on my mayor's report, we've got the tones working on the clock tower. I thought the music was gonna be really easy, it's not. And I've got our IT person is on vacation for a couple of weeks. I need to work with him. They're MP3 files, and iTunes is where we got the tones that are ringing on the quarter hour. And you can get a lot of great things with vocals in them, but the type of music that we were playing, we just really can't find. And so I think the most pressing need is making sure that our Chimes and Lights Festival has music. And is it gonna be acceptable if Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer has, Burl Ives singing it versus the tones that we had before?
Festival of chimes and lights.
Yeah, we've got a challenge. I'm just making you aware of my challenge.
I think it's a rights issue and royalties.
We're buying, we're gonna purchase it. It's not that I'm pirating it.
I know,
It's just
but,
how we
yeah.
get it. It's how we get it, so.
Certain music
from
is not
YouTube?
just about buying it, it's the reproduction of it. If you're
Yeah.
broadcasting it through a whole
Yeah.
city, you could have ASCAP and BMI issues. And
Yeah.
so some of the older songs, they're called traditionals, you don't need that. But if there's something with Burl Ives involved, you might want to double check. We don't want to be,
And I just
have
threw
an
that out
ASCAP
there.
knock on our door.
Yeah, so anyway, it's not as straightforward as, we've got tones, the clock tower's working. It's an amplifier, speakers, and a PC versus the antiquated thing we had in there. So it's functioning, it's just how we get that music is my next challenge, so.
We still have the antiquated system?
It's sitting on the shelf, and it's little chips
Yeah,
that
no,
you can't.
I bought it,
cards,
so I
yeah.
understand what it is.
Yeah, it's on a shelf. We're gonna surplus it to transit, I hear.
Is there any way that you can record off of those that we already have?
It's dead. The machine's dead.
Oh, the machine is dead, okay.
Yeah, that's the challenge. The machine's dead.
The squirrels died.
The squirrels died, or.
You mean those obsolete chips have obsolete technology that's not working?
Yeah, we
or
can't,
fixable?
I don't know if we could buy a machine. It would be cost prohibitive to buy a machine to put those chips in.
By eBay.
Try to be, yeah. Okay. So just an exciting, on Friday, I signed administratively a contract for surveying services so that we can start the bid specs for paving on Lippert and Sedgwick and Sydney. So preparing those specs will at least allow us prepare a budget item as we go through our mid-biennial review, and hopefully we can find the dollars to pave those streets we've been talking about for a couple of years. Well 13, we drilled that pilot hole almost 2,000 feet, and I talked to Mike yesterday, and so we've drilled and inserted 100 feet of 36-inch casing and 150 feet of 30-inch casing, and now they're tooling up for the next phase, which is 20-inch casing for 1,300 feet, and then from there they'll go into drilling to put the screens in, I'm told. So the goal is by the end of the year that 1,300 feet will be drilled and the casing installed. So, and here's another. So, the Rotary Club is, the Noon Rotary Club is selling some benches so that we can stay out of the procurement of benches that are fairly expensive down the waterfront. They're selling those benches. There's 3 benches. They've sold 2 of them, and it's part of the money, selling the bricks and raising the money for improvements down at Etta Turner Park, lighting improvements at Etta Turner Park, and to put electrical outlets so we can put seasonal lighting on the bridge. They started talking about this 5 or 6 years ago, and our electrician put a bid, a cost for that. It was $20,000, and they were going to raise half of it, and the city would cover the other half of it and do the work, was the plan. They're getting close to that $10,000 mark, and I said, we should go, I bet this stuff hasn't gotten cheaper. We should go make sure that we've got enough money for this. The cost alone for the materials is $30,000, and it's $11,000 for the labor and the equipment rentals. So now we have a $41,000 project instead of a $20,000 project. So that caused some eyebrows to shoot up at Rotary, and so I just said that I need to know what dollar amount. I think it's fair. They're going to make a donation to the city, and I need to know what that dollar amount is, and then come back to you folks. And I think then we need to fund whatever. It's Etta Turner Park, but it is a city park, and the lighting is on our pathway and bridge. So I'm just kind of communicating that costs have gone up significantly on it. Something that
Did we shop that cost around, or was that with the
it's
original?
our people doing the work.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
So does that make the last remaining bench for sale $10,000?
Could be.
31.
So the
Do we have a
two.
buyer, John?
Oh,
And the
just
benches will
curious.
be similar to what we've got down there already, the green benches with the inscription plaque on them like the port did. And the Hokinson family, John, you could probably let us know what his first name is.
John.
John Hokinson served on our planning commission for many
Forever.
years, and his family asked that we have, when the next section of the pathway got done, that they would love to buy a bench down there, and then Beck Ashby's bought one of the benches, so.
Is that something that we could consider bidding out?
We could. I don't believe it'll be cheaper, but
Okay.
We've been having trouble getting anybody to bid small projects. It's a trench, and it's wire, and it's conduit, And the problem is the trench, it goes the entire length of the park. The electrical panel is up by Key Bank.
Oh.
And then it's replacing 2 street lights that are there with LED lights, and then putting a 3rd light down at the base of the bridge for more illumination down there, and then running a power circuit in that same trench over to the bridge so that we can put seasonal lighting on the bridge, was the plan. So, and maybe we don't do all of it, but that's kind of what Rotary's been selling bricks on, what it's for. And, they've sold a number of bricks.
Is it worth checking out in the off-season just to see, just the truth that it might?
We can definitely put it out to bid. Public Works has plenty to do. It just takes time too, though, then put bid specs out.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the thing is, right now, this has just been getting estimates from the materials and putting a rough estimate. I mean, if we're gonna try to put something out that's equitable to bid, there's a certain amount of effort to put that ad-ready spec out as opposed to
And then your
just,
time becomes money, and then what's the same?
And the other side of that too is we're buying the materials at the same wholesale place as the contractor is, and then they're gonna mark that stuff up.
All right, well, I'll trust your judgment on what's best, of course.
Any more to come, I've got to find out how much of a dollar commitment we're gonna get first before we can talk about this anymore. Last two things I've got, we're gonna have a meeting tomorrow about, and I know this is necessary in the world we live in, but I have some apprehension about it, and it's called active shooter training, and the county wants to conduct that here. They've done it up at the courthouse. Would involve closing City Hall. They want to close City Hall for an entire day for the training. I think I'm going to propose that we do a couple of, like a half day, and we break it into 2 sessions. What they want to do is the classroom piece of it, the first half of the day, and then the actual exercise, which involves the discharge of firearms, actually, in the city, in City Hall with blank rounds. So, so I just kind of wanted to gauge reaction more than anything about.
You have to close City Hall for the classroom portion?
Well, that's what my proposal is going to be and the chief hasn't heard this yet, it would be to do it 2 days, in the morning, possibly, or an afternoon and a morning, and then there's that afternoon we would potentially close for a half a day, is what I'm gonna propose back.
What I would suggest is one day where half of it is closed or open with classroom, and then you close it for the second half that they can get it all done in one day, but you're only closing City Hall for half a day.
And if I do it and that's what I'm gonna propose, and then I have to break it into 2 half-day sessions, because if everybody's here in the classroom training, I don't have anybody answer the telephone.
Minor
Have they ever
problem.
done it on a weekend?
And then I have to pay overtime, so, moving on,
Rob, there are shorter classes. I've taken one, it was 2 hours long.
okay,
Food for thought.
yep. The 1406 funds, which is the affordable housing money, I've got a proposal so far from Housing Kitsap, and they really aren't geared up to do rental subsidies and utility subsidies. They don't have a program. And what their proposal is, they have a waiting list in Port Orchard right now for funds, and their grants from anywhere from $8,000 to $20,000 for someone low income, usually seniors and vets that have a leaky roof, leaky windows, a bathroom that's so that's their proposal. Kitsap Community Resources, I've talked to them. They do currently, through a grant process countywide, rental assistance and utility assistance. So I'm waiting on their proposal back, and we've got to make a decision one way or which direction we'd like to go with these funds. And more information to come on that. But Housing Kitsap just wasn't equipped to do the rental assistance. Do you guys want to do assistance to homeowners, or do you want to do rental assistance and utility assistance?
I'd like to see the 2 proposals and just get an idea of how many people we could positively impact either way.
Okay.
Before making
Okay, and it's about $30,000 a year is what, it's not a lot of money.
Yeah, I second that. Maybe we could split it.
Okay. I don't know how impactful it would be to split into 2 programs.
Right.
And then you got $10,000 or $15,000, you're probably doing 1 house.
We
and
might
Versus
start
2.
Versus 2,
utility
yeah,
assistance.
or we might be helping a number of people with rental assistance.
Okay, well, let's look at that, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the proposal I don't have back yet. All right, that's all I have for my report. Where are we on the agenda?
Department heads.
Department heads. Thank you. Mr. Dorsey, what do you have?
just to let you know that Councilmember Ashby and myself will be meeting on October 15th with the legislative group that's hopefully going to keep the SR 16-160 Sedgwick $6 million project on the Hobbs bill. So
Okay, that's the Sedgwick-Sydney interchange that we're,
it's the round,
that we're
compact
lobbying for.
roundabouts, and yeah, so fingers crossed that we make a good impression and we get back on that initiative.
Mr. Bond?
Yeah, there is a grant opportunity that I have spoken to the mayor and Councilmember Ashby about. For cities under 20,000 in population, there was a House Bill 1923 that provided grants for increasing residential building capacity in a city. And we were considering using, one of the things you can do with this funding is prepare sub-area plans such as for our centers. And we were considering one of two projects, either doing the Sydney-Sedgwick area over near Albertsons and developing a sub-area plan, or doing a downtown sub-area plan to sort of update and coordinate with the Imagine Port Orchard group and try to come up with a more coherent downtown plan. And we're leaning towards, with council and mayoral approval, applying for the downtown plan, because we've also realized through working with PSRC that our level of activity downtown and at the county courthouse, we're actually above the threshold for being considered a regional center. And so it's possible that by developing this plan, we could apply to PSRC to be designated as a regional center and then be eligible for regional center funding at PSRC. And so I think that would be a worthwhile thing to explore as part of a sub-area planning process. To be a regional center, you have to have an existing level of activity of 20 jobs or housing units per acre, which is exactly where we're at right now. And you have to plan for, I think, 48 jobs or housing units per acre in total. And so it roughly doubles the level of employment and housing in our downtown and at the county campus. But when you consider the new courthouse that's in the works and some of the things with Kitsap Bank, we're probably not too far off from already heading in that direction, and I think it would open up some funding for us. So the application's due on October 15th, and I just want to check in and make sure everybody's comfortable with filling out an application for some funding to do that work.
The other positive to that is I think we end up through this process with a planned action EIS, don't we, Nick?
Yes, that's part of it, is you do a sub-area plan and a planned action EIS, and that does the environmental review for implementing the plan rather than having to do SEPA review on every individual piece of it as it develops.
Mr. Clausen?
If you're successful with the grant, is it envisioned that would cover the entire cost of the plan development, or do we have to contribute something?
There is some match, but it can be in kind in terms of staff resources, though I think the cost for doing something like this is probably more than the maximum for the grant. The grant's $50,000. I think this is probably a $70,000 to $80,000 project on the just to get a nuts and bolts plan together. If you want to do a more extensive level of outreach, you're probably looking at closer to 100. So there is some potential cost. I think some of this can already fit into the budget because we've our professional services expenditures have been under what we projected for this budget year. So I think it can be squeezed in to the existing budget for the most part if we were successful.
Remember, too, one of the things that came from our retreat was the need to plan for our different centers and do sub-area plans for our centers. We haven't funded any of those activities, and that this would be the first of those activities that we discussed in our retreat.
Ties into a question I had. We identified the Sydney-Sedgwick sub-area as one of our most emergent needs just because of the transportation traffic issues in that area. What would this do to that? Or is it too much horsepower to try and run two sub-area plans?
We're working on that one in-house right now, and we're looking at doing some outreach. I think our biggest limitation is that we don't have anybody in-house that can do planning graphics and really do the illustrations. I think Ian, our engineering tech, has more than enough work in front of him. He can actually help us with them when he has a free minute, but that isn't very often. So we're trying to find some time to have him help us with the graphics that we need for the plan. But we've been working on text, and we're getting ready to start the public outreach process.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Anything else? Sharon?
For me tonight, thank you.
Chief Brown, you have anything to share?
Nothing else. Thank you.
You're going to go to Kiwanis with me next week, so.
I look forward to it.
Clerk Ryerson?
I have nothing either. Thank you.
All right, with that, we're to our second citizen comment period. Anyone wishing to address the council this evening has 3 minutes, and please identify yourself for the record.
My name is Bill Evans. I've lived in Port Orchard since 1975 and have therefore seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of city council decisions over 45 years. To be sure, the proposed development for the downtown corridor is exciting and frankly long overdue. I'm all for it. However, application of eminent domain, essentially forcing people out of their homes to facilitate a walking and bicycle whatever path into and through Annapolis, creates a potentially ugly unintended consequence, in my opinion. City council leadership often makes this mistake, no matter the size of the municipality. The City Council of Seattle is one ugly decision after another. I'm part of a business on First Avenue South in Seattle that relies solely on walk-in traffic and street parking. For most of last year, the city was tearing up First Avenue South for a streetcar initiative, resulting in millions of dollars in lost revenue for the affected businesses. After months of construction, the city summarily canceled the entire project without one word of apology or acknowledgement of the damage they had done to the existing businesses. The City Council of Lakewood Tacoma is yet another ugly example, recently having instituted a traffic mitigation fee, charging new businesses a fee for the estimated ingress and egress trips the new business will create, resulting in the unintended consequence of killing business development where it is badly needed. The City Council of Port Orchard is now faced with a similar opportunity. Create an environment where business development is encouraged, or implement eminent domain and screw the homeowners and the businesses of Annapolis. The path in question is obviously not a have to, nor is it a need to. It therefore must be a want to. And who or what is the driving force behind the initiative? Is it big bucks developers? Is it the Port Orchard City Council, who at one time voted to not impose eminent domain? Or is it the possibility of having to return thousands of dollars because the train has already left the station? The goal here should be achieving responsible development of the pathway in such a manner as to reduce the negative impacts on landowners, residents, occupants, and successful businesses. This goal requires open, honest, transparent, and responsive communication. Fact doesn't matter, perception does. The homeowners and businesses with whom I have spoken believe the city has dropped the ball on all counts. If it is still the belief that the upside potential of a 0.6 of a mile pathway outweighs the downside risk of upending homeowners and successful businesses, I suggest the mayor and the council cease their less than responsive ways and initiate a good faith collaborative effort to find solutions amenable to all parties. Thank you.
Robert McGee, 2065 Bay Street. I stand before you tonight to speak directly to the City Council to avoid any public relation reshaping of the issues. We, the citizens of the city, are concerned that our elected officials are not listening to the electorate and are not engaging in responsible development, but instead are blinded by general development possibilities and other interests. Despite efforts by representatives of the city to introduce friction amongst our ranks by circulating misappropriated information and comments, the Bay Street and Annapolis community are together in their desire to hold elected officials accountable. The citizens do not want to be dictated to. We want to be heard. During the City Council's work study session last Tuesday evening, the mayor acknowledged a failure to inform the public that the city had re-engaged a right-of-way agent. The unstated assumption of the mayor's statement is that our elected officials are moving forward with this project as planned and the citizens better deal with it. This is counter to the fundamental principles of democracy and what the citizens most affected by the pathway are requesting, a dialogue about collaborative, responsible development that considers how this project will affect private citizens and small businesses alike. That private citizen shall have a voice in the design of the pathway is not unprecedented. The city seems to have responded to an objection raised by the Quisenberries to running the pathway through their property by, after collaboration, relocating the pathway somehow to the water side of the property. We, although small in comparison to the Quisenberries, are requesting that we just be afforded the same opportunity that was apparently afforded them, an opportunity to have a dialogue with the city to discuss alternative solutions. Contrary to assertions from Mr. Dorsey last Tuesday's meeting, no attorney representing Annapolis Key or myself met with the mayor or Mr. Dorsey prior to 2018. During those 2018 meetings, we were told by the city, and in particular Mr. Dorsey, in no uncertain terms, in effect, just deal with it, with the city's plans. In the face of being shut down in such a manner, at being told that our opinions and views on the issue were not welcomed, we did not continue to waste our resources and instead have focused our efforts on public requests in an effort to learn more about the pathway and community outreach to raise awareness, which, thank you, you have done. The city repeatedly glosses over the severe negative impacts on the residences and businesses located in and around Annapolis, while the mayor dismisses out of hand any concerns with regard to the businesses besides a loss of parking. We do not take such impacts and drastic limitation, perhaps near total, on the utilization of our properties so lightly. The bottom line is the Annapolis neighborhood and the Bay Street community, which has existed for decades, will be irreparably changed, perhaps eliminated, as a result of the development of the pathway. Unlike the already constructed pathway, the city is dead set on choking off the remaining properties, laying a pathway over which vehicular traffic must traverse to access businesses and residents. Setting aside the disregard for public safety, it's disheartening that the city is set on destroying parts of Old Port Orchard for an unclear and intangible benefit. This is not responsible development at this time, in my opinion. We are at a crossroads for Port Orchard. I hope our representatives choose a productive path. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Others wishing to address the council this evening?
Kate Cooper, 1805 Bay Street. Port Orchard hasn't been a welcoming place. It isn't Cedar Cove. Nonetheless, when my neighbors, included local businesses, needed help to publicize the many issues the Bay Street pedestrian path has, I stepped forward. The petition was launched prior to a meeting with those involved creating what became the Annapolis Association. I set up a page on Facebook the following weekend as well as a group. In 3 days, I started a conversation. It is not just about the businesses between Venture Charter Boats and Whiskey Gulch, which also includes tenants at the Proper and Stay Gold, but about residents, both owners as well as tenants, people who will have the quality of their lives affected by poor planning and lack of consideration by the city of Port Orchard. The hearing last week did not address many questions. The presented plan is not feasible. I have walked the path in both directions daily for 6 summers. It can't be facilitated in the way it has been planned. It is much wider than the path at the old aquarium building slated for demolition. All you have to do is look forward towards the residences to see the impact it will have on every property. I have concerns. This includes the width of the path and speeders left unaddressed, no funding to police or maintain, unknown environmental impact to the 84-year-old landfill underneath the path, impact to the community parking and historic buildings, clarification of the right-of-way, forced eminent domain or easement. What happened to the decision to not force eminent domain back in 2014? Why are you not keeping your word? I have the right to the quiet, peaceful enjoyment of my property. The city codes, statutes, and laws are only as good as their enforcement. A path going to my door precludes this. When will it be enough? If the path can deviate around my neighbor, Mr. Jones, it can also deviate around my yard, which protects my privacy and safety. The foot and bicycle path does not require the same kind of plan as the downtown plan implemented earlier this year, which was respectful to those businesses in the West Bay area, its residents, and the parking. Why are we not given the same consideration? There are a few that utilize the current path 8 months of the year. I am one of the few that does. It does not provide a ferry on the weekends. The foot and bike path traffic is a fraction of what the downtown area sees on any given day or weekend. I want a reasonable path that is safe. It can be a flat path with a waterside railing stenciling for intermediate bikers and respectful of the community and commerce locally in Annapolis. Statistics and facts support this. The residents are not against the path. We are against the proposed plan and the city going back on its word in 2014. We want to be included in the process. We are talking about our homes and businesses, our civil rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Chuck Huck, citizen of Port Orchard. As many of you know, I am the owner and operator of Whiskey Gulch. I've been in this, I never use this thing. I've been in this industry forever. Between my family, my grandparents, we're at about 115 years. I have opened up numerous restaurants. I've helped people open up numerous restaurants. I've looked at locations that work. I looked at locations that don't work. There's a lot of science that actually goes into opening a successful restaurant. That's why we've all seen many go under. We've seen, it all happens all the time. That's why it's really difficult to even get a loan to open a restaurant, because they fail so often. So what you're proposing right now will cause us to fail. But I get up at 3 in the morning, like my wife sees, and I go and I sit at Whiskey Gulch and I go over every possible solution to work with you guys to figure out a solution, and you guys won't work with us. And it's super frustrating. You refuse to. All we want to do is sit with you. And I have some knowledge when it comes to this. I've opened up numerous successful restaurants, and I've had unsuccessful. But I know how to make this work, and I feel like we have some solutions where we can actually go and work together and help each other and still have this great business and still, have a pathway and, progress the city. But where we're at right now is we have a divide in the city right now, and it's really a shame, because we should all be coming together, because there is a lot of great things happening in this community. And right now it just seems like I can't even walk into a grocery store with somebody giving me a hug and say, I'm so sorry for what's going on. I feel like they look at me like somebody died every time I go somewhere. Half the time I don't want to leave my house. And I heard Randy Jones talk about, night terrors and stuff like that. That stuff is real. I mean, my wife sees me. I don't sleep at night because I have 30 employees that depend on this job, and they depend on me to make sure they still have this job. And I have a city that won't work with us to go and come up with a solution to continue to have this great business that we've worked so hard to have. And I beg you, please come and talk to us. That's all I ask, all of you. We're not asking for one person. Come talk to us, work with us, please. Thank you. Chuck.
Your comments. Others wishing to address the council this evening?
Well, it's hard to follow that. My name is Tracy DiGiovanni. I'm an attorney with the Shires Law Firm. Present with me from my office is my colleague Kevin Nod. We represent Annapolis Key LLC, who owns the property upon which Whiskey Gulch is located, and a leased parking lot to the, I think it would be west, as shown by the drawings up there. I'm here to comment on Phase 2 of the Bay Street Pathway. Through our representation of Annapolis Key, I've learned more about the city's planned development. The more I learn about the pathway and study the proposed course, I am left with more questions than answers. The primary question is whether the potential effects the pathway will have on the citizens and businesses in the Bay Street and Annapolis communities are being adequately considered or addressed. Let's take a step back, and for comparison purposes, let's consider Phase 1 of the pathway. Phase 1 does not front any businesses. Instead, it runs along the water edge for the majority of the course. The only portion that fronts an establishment, the Marley Apartments, requires traffic to enter and cross the pathway to enter the Marley Apartments. The volume of traffic for a small residential apartment complex is less than a business. The portion of the pathway that does run along the road is lined with a chain link fence. I assume this is for public safety concerns. The pathway of Phase 1 ends before returning to Bay Street. Phase 2, on the other hand, will apparently run a large portion of its course over the water. When you drive along there, and it's supposed to be 14 feet wide, it's not on the ground, it's not staked out on the ground, but to my eye, 14 feet, it's going to be built into the water, into the shore, from the drawings I see and visually looking at it. Except for when it runs by a building. And in that case, the pathway in every case will run along the street side of that parcel. According to the city, much of the 14 feet is within the city right-of-way, so you don't need the eminent domain in that situation. However, when you look at it and you put that 14-foot pathway there, it runs right up to the front of front doors, to the front doors of businesses, eliminating parking, eliminating turnaround areas. It's very difficult to pull into those areas and turn around as it is, let alone putting a 14-foot wide pathway there. The uses of the pathway are going to be for walkers, joggers, bikers, skaters, skateboarders, whatever. There's going to be people, it's going to attract people going on the pathway. We're going to have cars crossing that pathway to go into businesses or trying to go into the businesses. We're going to have people, where are the people going to park where the parking lots are being taken away? Where's the safety involved? Is there going to be a chain link fence along the side? That's an eyesore for the businesses and for the community. Are there going to be gaps in this chain link fence? Are there going to be barriers between this 14-foot wood pathway and the curvy street that Bay Street is, and along all those curves? All these things concern me, and I obviously must wrap up. So we want, as stated before, an open line of communication between the citizens along Bay Street and the city, which would alleviate a lot of these issues as questions can be addressed and solutions reached. And appreciate your time.
Thank you for your comments. Others wish to address the council this evening?
Gregory Vance Vaughn, 243 Tremont Place. One has to wonder how our city and mayor can fail to see the real harm that they're doing to both themselves and the people that they represent here in Port Orchard. As I see what is happening here, all of these people here, myself included, are standing up for freedom, and we can free our city from lawsuits, but it's up to you to do the right thing. Since we talked, or since I came up here last, I found yet one more good reason why you should take that solution that I gave you and move that gas station to the exact sized and shaped parcel that you own, just across the street, right next to Group Health, in a commercial area. And this reason that I have for you is that you guys, having worked on that roadway for the last 2 years, have already contaminated that soil with all the construction stuff that's been staged up there all this time. There's no need to go ahead and contaminate the other side that's right next to a bunch of houses. It's really criminal. And you really need to start really thinking about what you're doing here to a whole neighborhood. This summer, I had a new neighbor just move in. He's got 3 small kids. He wanted to be here today, but he has to work. He wanted me to tell you that he's really concerned for their safety. And so am I. We live on a little dead-end street. We've already experienced what happens when you open up that dead-end street to a bunch of traffic. People come down the other part of our dead-end street, the privately owned street that we have, and then they have to turn around, and they get upset, they go fast. My garage door's already been damaged. I did some things to stop that type of thing, but these kids running around, they've been running around all summer. It's a definite safety hazard. In my open letter that I sent into the paper, it didn't go in right away. It sat there for 2 weeks, and it was published on 13 September, the very day that this city signed the gas station permit. I have to say, if you continue to ignore the citizens who elected you, we can only conclude that you rented out your brains a long time ago, and you will be long remembered for having let out your soul, and that's gone with it, every one of you.
Thank you for your comments this evening.
Nicole Vaught, 243 Tremont Place. A man's home is his castle. You were elected by us. You are working for us. The citizen entrusted you with the city welfare. And what are you doing? You are selling the city to investors and promoters, and you just ignore the citizens. You are only focusing on the light or the color of the light instead of listening to the citizens. Some of you were wondering why no one is running against the mayor and 4 seats in that council. Let me give you some insight of what happened 4 years ago. Some of us were trying to save our good, human, caring, conservative, not-for-sale Mayor Tim Mathis and give him a city council that will work with all of us. Some of us went through so many intimidations, harassment, even threat and insult by individuals, some of them using fake names like John Holmes or Ass, that some of us, like me, were starting to be really concerned for our security. Stress and anxiety can kill just like a straight bullet. Mr. Petansu, both the Kitsap Republican Party, through a consulting business that belongs to the chairman of the party. Mr. Clausen paid that business for a study concerning the fast food ferry even before that business was registered and legal. That business had 7 different addresses during that 1 year of existence, one of them being that of Representative Caldier, another one the former Chamber of Commerce Director, and the last one on Sydney, 406, your address, Mr. Mayor. You paid some $10,000 to a business at your home address, zone single-family residence, not commercial. Were you a silent partner or were you laundering money? You all received $10,000 or $5,000 from Chicago Realtor Association. The result that you were endorsed by Caldier, Angel, and officially the Kitsap Republican Party through its chairman. Because this is what you are, a product destroying our city by big money, not necessarily for you, certainly not for the city, but for outsiders that will get rid of you as soon as they finish with using you. And you don't even see that you're cutting the branch that you're sitting on. Please wake up. And those of you that still see that city as a town where people are living and not an investment for foreigners, please help us. At least have the courtesy to talk to us. People of Port Orchard's lives matter.
Anyone else wishing to address the council?
Randy Jones, Venture Charters, 1777 Bay Street. Been a resident since 1978 when Jimmy Carter was president. In 2014, Beck Ashby was the only person to vote for eminent domain. Talk about respectability in neighborhood. In the video last week, she moves into our neighborhood. She looks down on our homes. She wants to gut our homes, gut our businesses. What's her house going to be worth when condos in a park are down below it? Mr. Dorsey, you told us in this building.
Mr. Jones, direct your comments to the council.
You're using my 3 minutes.
Mr. Jones, direct your comments to the
Mr.
council.
Dorsey told me in this building, mitigation was not a factor. Mitigation, tell that to the city of Seattle who paid $8 million just to rebuild their own seawall, rebuild it. Downtown Bremerton was told by mitigation that they could not have their boardwalk, period. The federal government could not have its shipyard, could not have its dry dock. Mitigation is 1 for 1. If you tear down a building or tear down a piling, you can build something. He knew this. He said mitigation wasn't a factor. Mitigation is very much a factor. And then later he reiterated it was a factor. Now, the cost of mitigation could be millions of dollars. That would, if that cost is offset and of value. So to tell us mitigation wasn't a factor when he knew for financial gain for the city and for his reputation would be fraud. He told us we have witnesses that mitigation was not a factor. That's worth millions of dollars. And he tried to get us to sell, saying that he could force us to sell using eminent domain without mitigation being a factor. City has never offered me a dime, or Mr. Haynes or anyone else a factual number. Mr. McGee believed that I was holding out for the city and was told that reason and made a fool of himself. And I understand, Mr. McGee, and you're on our side. Also outed for a anonymous letter. Shame on you for that. That was disgusting.
Hi, my name is Sean Danubio. I've lived here my entire life. I own a home and I work in Annapolis. I'm here to represent the 30 employees we have here at Whiskey Gulch. We are just here to ask you, the city, for transparency and a clear plan of what's to come. I started at Whiskey Gulch 3 years ago, and it was a little coffee shop. The restaurant's growth was huge, as well as my own. I learned so much and developed as a person and a leader. Whiskey Gulch taught me daily on my journey as becoming a general manager. The Gulch is different than any other restaurant that I've worked at. It's a people-first kind of place. It gives back to the community. Whiskey Gulch created a family-like environment for everybody, including the staff. It's a great place to work. It's a place for everyone. Lawyers and judges and construction workers can all get together and hang out and converse. A place where teachers can meet and grow our schools together. We can't allow a pathway to harm that environment we created so hard to work for. The pathway will affect all of us that depend on Annapolis for our livelihood. Just as the Gulch has grown so rapidly, so are we as a city. We all need to work together as a city towards something that will be an asset, not something that will be divisive and put people out. As we grow as a city, I encourage us to grow towards becoming more like the Gulch, a place that cares for its people, gives back, and a place that all walks of life can get together, hang out, and converse over a beer. That way everyone in the city can benefit, not just a few. Thank you, guys.
Anyone else wishing to address the council this evening?
Well, for a second, I'm going to kind of change the topic. One of the reasons, pardon? Can you state your name for the record? Jerry Harmon. One of the reasons that I come here is to keep track of what's happening in our community, because I also went through something like this when you wanted to raise the height of the buildings downtown, but we weren't even informed. In fact, some of your, or at least one of your city council persons, started off with that group of people. So I've been coming for a lot of years, and one of the things I want to talk about is, first of all, when you're up here, you have microphones that are of pretty poor quality. And when you turn your head to talk to the people next to you, your voice doesn't go in this microphone. And a good number of you do that continually. So we're only hearing about half of what you're saying. I would like you to investigate how much the microphones that go over your head and are right in front of you. So if you want to look at the people that you're talking to, at least your microphone travels with you. That's what I'm asking. Then another thing that I wanted to talk about was last week at the study session, you had a nice timeline of everything that happened on the pathway. But one of the things, and I'm not a real fast thinker, I went home and I got to thinking about that timeline. And that timeline is close to 20 years in length. And I was thinking, well, where Whiskey Gulch used to be a teriyaki restaurant at that time. So the 250 some letters that went out to the people, did it go to the new people that have bought homes and things all along the trail? Just wondering, because they weren't informed. I know that the path was only supposed to be a walking path, and things got changed on it. And I don't know who changed it. I kind of got the impression, sitting here and listening, that whoever you submitted it to wanted it to be both a walking path and a bike path, or they wouldn't have passed it. But I'm not positive on that. So I guess what I'm saying is, I don't believe, and I've said it many, many times, nobody should lose their home or their business over a bike path. and you need to come to another solution. And it's unbelievable that people are having to come and beg this council to have some time to try to find a better solution. It's not right. Yet you get people wanting to build a community center and you're all right there behind them saying, oh, this is a great idea. It might be a great idea. I don't know. I probably won't be around when it's finished. But I will say that, in my opinion, coming here, developers and real estate people get a nice, handy welcome, and the rest of the people don't. And it's something you need to be thinking about. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the council this evening? With that, we'll close the citizen comment session. Council will be going into a 20-minute executive session to discuss existing and potential litigation. The council will not be taking any action after that executive session.